Joe, you want to make some introductions?
Sure. We're really just so glad that you're here today, Anna and Sandra. They were our candidates for the Arizona Corporate Commission. Part of the reason we're excited about having you today is we want to talk about that race and what we can do as the Democrats of Greater Tucson to help. And we're starting early, and I think that's a sign of our commitment to anyone who runs for that race. And but we're glad you did run. Anytime somebody runs, I am completely impressed. So thank you. And I know in some cases, Sandra, you've run, I think 3 times at least. So a lot of experience. Okay, we'll be looking at the Arizona Corporate Commission candidates, often termed the Arizona Corporate Commissioner, the 4th branch of the Arizona Constitutional Order. We're going to be extending out to an hour and a half. We want to make sure you have all your questions answered, and I'm sure we have the right people to answer those questions about the Arizona Corporate Commission. And we will be discussing the role of the commission under our Constitution and laws, the current direction of the commission under Republican control, and evaluation of the 2022 election, and the possible future work of the commission if given a Democratic majority. So, Mike, it's all yours.
Thanks, Joe. So first of all, I'd like to see if either of the panelists who are present would like to make a little introductory remarks to just orient us as to and remind us who you are and what you've been doing recently.
Well, Mike and to DGT, thank you so much for having us today. I've got a little bit of laryngitis, but I've got my tea here, so hopefully you'll be able to hear me and it will not be a problem with me participating. It is an honor to be here with all of you today, and I see some very familiar faces. I thought I saw Mr. Lowe there at one point, and I saw Robert Bulacek. These are folks who have really worked really hard to make change at the commission. They are very outspoken. And during my time at the commission, I really appreciate you spending time with me and giving up of your time to talk about issues and share your.
Sorry about that.
I'm not sure what you missed, but I was just saying the expertise that Mr. Lowe's and Mr. Bulacek would give to the commission. Their expertise did not go unnoticed, and I would encourage them to continue to do what they do and to express their thoughts at the commission. I have enjoyed my time off from being at the commission. I have tried not to get involved, but it's a little hard. I have been watching some of the things that are going on, and I think I'll talk a little bit about that after the introduction. So I won't talk too much, Lauren.
Oh, thanks, Sandra. And I wrote in the chat, you know, it's ironic that Sandra's lost her voice because she's been the voice, not just for solar, not just for consumers, but for Arizonans and ratepayers for decades. So it's sort of ironic, but we cannot keep your voice silenced. So I want to just thank all of you because Pima County, they pulled through for Kennedy and Kuby. Thank you so much. You know, we won Pima County. We so appreciate all your efforts on our behalf. We know that you understand energy policy like no other. I mean, you really brought attention to this race throughout the primary and through the general election season. So we're so indebted to all of your help. And Sandra and I traveled so much to Pima County. It was so important for us to get out of Maricopa County, to cross the state, to be in the tribal nations, to really go to every single county. And we did that, and many, many times too. So thank you, everyone. Since the race, I actually blasted out my knee, multiple injuries on election day. I was on my bicycle. My dog Raja was not riding a bicycle, but running alongside me. But he was dressed as a solar panel, I'll have you know. And then he stopped on a dime, and my knee went, ugh. I had a terrible accident, and so I had to strengthen up my knee. And now I had surgery a few weeks ago, and I'm recovering from all that. So that's been one thing I've been dealing with. And I also decided to leave ASU, retire. I'm not retiring from public life in any sense, but decided that I needed to really devote myself full time to climate activism and to other issues and concerns in Tempe. So I am no longer, a year ago, I was a full-time employee with ASU and a statewide candidate and a full-time council member. And now I am a grandma, and it's one of life's greatest joys, and just reaffirms why we're all in this fight together. It's been the joy of my life to be a grandma. And Sandra told me how much it was going to impact me, and she was right, man. It's really turned my life, and it gives me perspective too when I'm dealing with some nitty-gritty political things, and I can spend time with Rory. I call her Rory the Riveter. It just refreshes me and commits me even further to this cause. So I'm looking forward to your questions, hoping Anna is going to join us today. And I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, when Anna does join us, if she does, we're going to ask her to give us an update on the current issues being addressed by the Arizona Corporation Commission and how we might help. But in the meantime, we're going to move on to a discussion between our two panelists who are here regarding the function of Arizona Corporation Commission in our government structure, and perhaps give us a little background as to why the Progressive Era framers of our Constitution chose to create this structure, and why it's unique and powerful for Arizona citizens and ratepayers.
I think I'll take a jab at that, Lauren. And if you can't hear me, just let me know, and I'll try to speak up just a little bit louder. Our forefathers were very forward thinking. When you look back and you look at today, the creation of the Corporation Commission is really considered the fourth branch of government. It was created because of the big oil companies back during the era of creating the Constitution and what the big oil companies were doing. And they thought that there needed to be some type of regulation brought to those entities. Well, I thank them for that, but we look at the commission, and the commission doesn't just regulate utilities. It is a place if you want to start a business. That's where you take you file your documentations to start your business, your 501c3, your LLC, your sole operation. It is the entity that has a securities division. If you feel that you have been wronged or someone has committed fraud against you, that is the place to go and try to retrieve or file your complaint to retrieve the funds that you have lost. They have, and I want to say we, like I'm still there. They have a utilities division.
We only wish, Sandra.
Yeah, I wish to, but you know what? They say when one door closes, another or two opens, so you never know. It has a legal division, a hearing division. And what's so important about these divisions is they all entangle or all commingled around everything that happens in your daily life. The utility division regulates nearly 300 small and large water companies. They're not all small anymore. Some of these companies are A, B, C, D, and E companies. And from the A companies, 5,000 plus customers, to the small E companies, 100 or less. So it is very important. And I tell people all the time, we need to take the time to educate people about what the commission does. And maybe there needs to be a name change of the commission rather than calling it the Corporation Commission, because nobody knows what that is or what they do. Maybe it should be called the Public Utilities / Corporation Commission. That way people will be more in tune to what is going on. It boggles my mind to see companies that got rate increases 2 years ago came back and got another rate increase in January and February of this year. It just kills my heart. We have commissioners that have gone to New York to participate on Wall Street and has said they want to know how it works, how it affects the companies that that the commission regulates. That is so out of touch with the people that elected them that we need to be calling that commissioner out because it is unethical. You don't do things like that. When a commissioner hires the sister of a commissioner, it's unethical, who used to be a big executive for a utility or an oil executive. Those are things that people just should not expect from the Corporation Commission. And if we aren't calling them out on issues like that or things like that, we might as well just pack up our bags, go home, and not have events like this today. That's what makes me upset. It gets me going, it gets my blood going, a boil. But because I can't participate at the commission for a year, and that is a policy, an ethics policy that has been created at the commission. So I will continue to do what I'm doing outside of the commission, but I would encourage as many of you to just educate people about what the commission does. If you want solar, we've got to elect people who are going to act on behalf of moving Arizona forward, not taking us backwards.
So Sandra, I assume that that policy regarding past commissioners not having business before the board for a year is to prevent lobbying, I suppose?
Absolutely. And I was even told about a week ago, because I had called to make sure that I wanted to write a letter to go into the docket, and I was told by legal to just be careful that it doesn't look like I am acting on behalf of someone else. I said, no, I'll be acting on behalf of myself.
Yeah.
So I have to really be careful. So yes.
Lauren, anything you want to add to that?
Well, just as you know, as commissioner, Sandra Kennedy held herself to the highest ethical standards, above and beyond. And we all know that the ethical rules need to be rewritten, and Tovar is talking about that. They need to be strengthened. And I just wanted to add about the constitutional framers. 110 years ago, they were very worried about the influence of lobbyists on the process, especially the railroad lobbyists, and as Sandra said, the oil lobbyists at the time. So they explicitly made this an elected seat, and that we're rare in the country in having elected commissioners. And right now, I mean, in Kevin Thompson, we have a lobbyist. He worked for Southwest Gas for 17 years. He was on the National Public Gas Policy Association Council, which aims to promote the natural gas industry with council members all across the country. He was even serving in that role while he was running for Corporation Commission. We tried to get that word out. A lot of the noise of the election and all the election deniers, our opponents were also election deniers, but somehow that didn't seem to capture the attention. People were so worried about what was happening at the top of the ticket. But we have, lobbyists that are running the show right now. And that's just a shame for Arizona consumers and ratepayers.
Yeah, totally agree with that. So the next subject that I'd like to turn to real quick is any announcements that people may have about their plans for 24. I know We certainly have Sandra and Lauren here who are, eminently well qualified, especially Sandra, to serve on the commission. But we also have a couple other candidates here that are expected to announce. Lauren and Sandra, do we have any news from you right now?
Well, I guess I'll start off. No news from me right now. I'm thinking about some possibilities. Currently, they don't include running for the Corporation Commission. We need to have candidates that have experience and as consumer advocates who understand the policy, who are leaders, who understand the importance of this commission. We need to have people with, that have shown real active involvement and engagement in civics and in our government. So, I don't think there's been a lot of candidates have declared in that realm. So I'll be interested to see what goes forward. But, fundamentally, this is a time where we should be educating people about the Corporation Commission, about how important it is. Because you don't know how many people have contacted me, and I'm sure Sandra, to say, oh my God, I wasn't paying attention to this race. And now look what Kevin Thompson is doing. And part of you wants to just say, thank you for noticing that. But you also want to say, could you have paid attention earlier?
Yeah, could you have paid attention when you could vote, please? Thank you very much.
Any
news?
Now I'm mulling over it because I just want to say that the Salt River Project has 1.1 million customers and has been notoriously slow in adapting and adopting the clean energy vision that many of us have, and they also are really pushing forward to try and have this Coolidge power plant developed, which is a textbook case of environmental racism. So that's an issue I'm focusing on now. But right now, no, I am not running for Corporation Commission.
Thanks, Lauren. Sandra?
And Michael and everyone else, no, I am not running for the Corporation Commission.
Oh, crushed.
So I would just say to you, find some candidates that, as Lauren has stated, are really going to act in your best interest, and make sure that you've got candidates who have voted in the past, and make sure that if they have voted in the past, ask them what their record is. I think that is very important, what their record is on issues and how they were fair and why they're really running. Those are the questions that you really.
While we have your experience and expertise here, let's go ahead and ask two of the candidates that are potentially running or have already announced to unmute and say hello. Raise your hand so I can identify you easily in the room. I think we have Jonathon Hill and Derek Feraldo here.
And thank you, sir. So yeah, my name's Derek Feraldo. I'm a declared candidate for Corporation Commissioner for 2024. I followed a lot of the work that Sandra has done, and Anna and Lauren, and just, you guys are all really inspiring. The electorate really made a mistake this last time around. And I do hope we talk a little more about, well, we have a presidential election next year, a big Senate election, but we can't leave the Corporation Commission behind. It looks like the Democrats can do a lot of great work to flip the legislature blue. We're that close, taking lots of statewide offices. We've made great progress, but if we have a blood red commission, then, I feel like that's going to be a big hindrance to the climate agenda for the next few years. I'm an attorney, an Army officer, and I'm a first-time candidate, so don't have a voting record, at least here in Arizona, but it's really great to hear from really experienced public servants like Sandra and Lauren. And again, and it's really inspiring to see a lot of the people here who really care about this policy and this commission. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thanks. Remain unmuted if you would, Derek. John Hill is also here. Hey, John, you want to say a few words about your candidacy?
Hi, Michael. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry to interrupt. That wasn't the intent. I was just coming to hear Anna and Lauren and Sandra talk. They've been such important parts of the commission and great representatives.
I figured this would be too good of an opportunity to pass up, to have you guys show up and not say a few words and possibly face some questions by Lauren and Sandra.
Yeah, I know I talked with DGT last year. So just a reminder, my name's Jonathon Hill. I'm an engineer and a scientist at ASU, primarily do Mars geology, but I've always been really passionate about environmental issues, and really want to bring technical knowledge to the commission. They regulate all these utilities, and I think it would be helpful to have, as part of that 5-member team, someone who's familiar with the technical aspects. So yeah, I'll be happy to stay on, but hopefully not to distract from Lauren and Sandra.
Not at all. This isn't part of the planned program, but Lauren and Sandra, do you have any questions for these gentlemen about their candidacy that might be helpful to our audience?
Well, Michael, I do. I'd like to ask Mr. Hill what technical issues he brings to the table.
Yeah, so my background is a little varied. So I began my career as an aerospace engineer. So very familiar with thermodynamics and structural analysis, those sorts of things. But in the later half of my career, I got pulled over to the dark side of geology. So that's actually what my PhD is in geological sciences. And so I think that would be very helpful to know when issues with these small water companies. Obviously, the commission doesn't regulate the city water operations, but the smaller operations, when it comes time to deciding about transmission line construction, what kind of areas are they going through? How do we protect the environment that it's going through, so we don't, get solar but ruin a whole bunch of environment by putting transmission lines through it. So yeah, that's just the technical aspects I hope to bring to the commission.
Lauren, do you have any questions for either of these gentlemen?
Well, just sort of some friendly advice, because the staff, and Sandra could speak to this issue, is replete with lots of experts, technical experts. You're not there as a technical expert. You're there as a representative of the people. So you're there to be fundamentally a consumer advocate and an advocate for the ratepayers. And a large majority of the work that's done are in these small water rate cases, right? And so it's really public policy. It's really about public policy, about being a leader, standing up and showing proven leadership, and also to be that advocate for the people, to what is in the best interest of the residents. So I would just give some friendly advice that, I'm not sure an argument that, you have, background is, I was a social scientist, but global future scientist. The background is, it's way more important to talk about consumer advocacy. And that's my friendly advice I give to both candidates.
Excellent advice, Laura. So I want to thank these gentlemen for joining us today. I would remind people that I believe, and anybody feel free to correct me, that there are 3 seats up for re-election in 24. So we currently have 2 candidates who have announced. I'm not sure if Anna's going to be running for re-election or not. And she's not here to answer that question right now. But in fact, we have 2 candidates, and I invite them to go ahead and drop their links in the chat for signing petitions or websites, qualifying donations if in fact you are running clean. And thank you for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and remove the pins from your video. Thanks for your indulgence on that, Lauren and Sandra. I appreciate it. I wanted to talk real briefly about any threats to the Arizona Corporation Commission's authority by the Arizona legislature. I know in recent years there's been a lot of talk about removing certain powers from the Arizona Corporation Commission. Can you address that, and can you address sort of the constitutional framework in which that happens?
Sure. I know last year there was a failed attempt to try and redefine the composition of the Corporation Commission, and they wanted to limit it to 5 areas, and one being someone involved in finance, someone who's a professional engineer. I picture someone with like a train hat, an engineer's cap, to someone who's a business manager. And they were trying to really restrict it because they were afraid. They weren't just afraid. They saw the leadership of Sandra Kennedy, and they didn't want another consumer advocate being on the commission. They were just trying to, make the choice for the people and railroad that decision. So that bill was kind of laughed out of the legislature, thankfully. And there was other sort of mean-spirited bills meant to take away powers of the commission because they saw, Sandra and I and Anna creating a Democratic majority. That didn't happen. I know there's a number of bills before the legislature, and the commission has taken a stand and got the commission removed or accepted for some of the bills they have about rulemaking. I think there is one about gas stoves. They're trying to prohibit, you probably know more about that. Just like prohibit bans on gas stoves in residential areas. Like it's ridiculous. We have the power of the veto pen now. So I don't think we see as much activities we did last year under Ducey, but with Katie Hobbs, we know she's going to see through all of that.
Thanks. Sandra, you want to weigh in on that at all?
No, well spoken.
Joe, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, actually, we do have a question in the chat room. And it's from Paul Stapleton Smith. Regarding the historical origin of the ACC, would our guests like to speak to railroad responsibilities for safety?
Well, that's a good one. And railroad safety was one of my top issues that was of concern to me when I got back to the commission in 2019, because there were 2 railroad crossings here in the state of Arizona. One was in Tucson, one is here in Maricopa County, and the one in Tucson has gotten an overpass now, which has eliminated most of the issues that had taken place or the accidents that had taken place. But the one here in Maricopa County continues to have accident after accident. Unfortunately, people have lost their lives, they've lost limbs. And there was an accident just recently back in January. So when you are on the top 5 list of most dangerous railroad crossings, you would think that the commission would want to do something about it. And because we've had a governor the last 8 years, Ducey, who didn't want to give the Corporation Commission enough money to function, it was hard on the commission and the Railroad and Pipeline Safety Division to actually function with their inspectors. So this year, I am really hoping that the commission gets the number of FTEs that they need to have inspectors actually go out and inspect the state of Arizona. When you have 2, that's not enough for the state. So if they get 2 more, that would ease up some of the issues. But we have issues that I think are really important is what's traveling on these trains? What's crossing through our cities?
Yeah, after all.
I asked that question when we had the not 1 explosion, but 2 explosions here that crossed in Tempe. And then we had the one recently in Pima County. And I've been asking questions about it. Trust me, I have not gone silent. I'm asking questions behind the scenes and I intend to get answers. And I will not allow anybody to silence me. So
thank you for fighting for us, even though you're out of office. You're such a lovely person.
I know that there are issues, and I know that the chemicals that they had on that train in southern Arizona were not the type of chemicals that should have been traveling through an area where you have residents. So again, I am hoping that the county down there will continue to do their due diligence, and I will continue to create a fight here so that the people in southern Arizona get answers that they need to have.
Lauren?
I would just add, very well said, Sandra, but we had the derailment in Tempe and the fire in 2020. It was just shortly, or no, I'm sorry, it was 21, shortly after Mayor Woods came into office. She was on the phone with elected officials in Tempe the next day, trying to ensure that Union Pacific was going to comply with all the environmental regulations, pay what they needed to pay, and so we wouldn't have to be in a lawsuit with them. But she was like a major force, and she was there for us and helping cities, but also helping the residents of Tempe. So it's a very overlooked part of the job with the ACC, but railroad and pipeline safety is such an important aspect of the ACC.
The next subject of discussion that I have slated for this panel is what can be accomplished in Arizona and for Arizonans with the ACC if we have an actual Democratic majority on that board. And at this point, I'd like to ask the two candidates who have announced to rejoin the conversation if they'd like, and give their vision for a Democratic majority on the board. But let's start off with Lauren and Sandra. Would either one of you like to address that first?
Yeah, I'll start. So, things have shifted. We now have a commission that is really dominated by the fossil fuel industry that doesn't seem to understand that our house is on fire and that it's an imperative. It's code red for humanity. And the recent IPCC report continues to affirm that it's code red for humanity. A lot of attention, though, has shifted, and it's because of the Inflation Reduction Act. And Sandra was invited at the signing of the IRA to come to the White House because she seems as such a national leader on these issues. But the governor has created an Office of Resiliency, and that office focuses on water, energy, and land use. And it's headed up by Mara Mahoney, who was Sandra's chief policy aide. She helped in my campaign too. This is someone who's very well versed in the climate crisis and policy. She's an attorney. And that office is going to serve as sort of an evangelical for the clean energy movement, but it's also going to help to direct funds from the IRA to cities and towns across Arizona, and not just the formulaic funds, which the Ducey administration did a terrible job of getting out when he was in office, but funds that are available to small communities, to the small rural electric co-ops. But a lot of these small communities don't have a full-time grant administrator or a writer. And so I think that office is going to help build capacity across the state, because rural communities, as we know from academic peer-reviewed research, stand to gain more from the Inflation Reduction Act even than cities do, because they have the land use, they have the land to maybe supply for these clean energy projects. So the governor's Office of Resilience is really going to serve as an economic engine and driver for the clean energy transition. And I see, attention kind of being pulled away from the ACC because the Republicans are in bed with the fossil fuel industry, and more attention is at the executive branch, where we have the bully pulpit, where we have funding from the federal government to really invest in that office and bring the best minds and the best activists and talk about things like the just transition, to talk about small communities and how they can lead the clean energy transition, and how we can build a solid middle class in Arizona through that transition with good union local jobs. So I'm really bullish on this. Unfortunately, I'm not bullish on the Arizona Corporation Commission right now, but I thank so much that Anna Tovar is the lone fighter on the commission fighting for consumers.
Sandra?
Well, I couldn't have said it any better than Lauren Kuby said it.
Jonathon or Derek, would you like to unmute yourself and address that question as to what we can do with a Democratic Arizona Corporation Commission?
Sure, I'll say that, what wouldn't change having a Democratic majority on the commission? I mean, you wouldn't have the commission sweeping ethics violations under the rug in the first 3 months of a term. You wouldn't have commissioners meeting and strategizing with the power companies and the lobbyists for the power companies in New York. You wouldn't have to worry about the ACC, trying to sideline it to try to get that Republican majority, not interrupting all these other programs. You can actually work with the commission, and I think really make some really quick, really important progress towards renewable energy. And I'll let Derek.
Yeah, so the bottom line is, with the Democrat majority on the commission, the consumers will have actual representation where we'll put them first. That's the bottom line there. The second thing is, as far as I know, Jonathon was talking about renewable energies, but we need to use all the lovely resources we have here in Arizona, and we need to push on these companies. We can have Arizona be energy independent. We can review all the different sources of energy. We can pretty much actually have an open discussion where we're not just having lobbyists in our ears tell us what to do. I think in a Democrat majority, we would give all ideas, different businesses, a fair shake at the Corporation Commission instead of that kind of right now, the select few who have special access and are kind of crowding out and pushing out other ideas. So with the Democrat majority, we can work with the legislature, we can work with the governor, and the possibilities are almost endless. So I think that's why we need to work hard and not forget about the commission next year.
Thank you, gentlemen.
If I could just add,
go ahead.
If I could just add, I mean, we had this historic opportunity with Sandra and I to get a Democratic majority with Anna Tovar. Now there are 3 seats up. So some might think, well, we can win those 3 seats, retain Anna's seat and get 2 more. But I mean, you all are very experienced politicos. It's going to be exceedingly difficult this year with a down ballot race. And, it's frustrating. I mean, we definitely have to get more Democrats elected, but that is going to be really difficult to get a Democratic majority. If we had a really solid chance, I don't know, our chances are dimming there. So that's why attention's more focused on the executive action. I mean, I would love to see it. I forgot to mention that the legislature, there is a bill moving forward, but I think the ACC has actually signed in against it, or they at least have said they voted that way. I don't know if they've actually done anything official, but there is legislation that wants to require the Corporation Commission to focus on affordability and reliability and not include sustainability in its decision-making, which is insane because when you think about the commission, they have to consider affordability, reliability, justice, and equity considerations, right? And also, justice and equity considerations. So it's absurd to take out one of the major considerations that the commission has to have. Obviously, if they're representing the entirety of Arizona, they need to be thinking about how these rate changes and decisions impact every Arizonan. So the idea of that sustainability and equity should be removed from the equation just makes no sense. And I hope that bill will fail. But even the commission itself right now is supposedly logged in against it.
I'm going to make an audible call here and go ahead and add John and Derek to the panel for questions and discussion. So if you gentlemen don't mind, I'm going to leave you pinned, and you can feel free to weigh on any questions that might be asked to you or asked generally, because you apparently are going to be our candidates, 2 of our candidates at least in 24. So the next item in the program was that myself, President Joe, and past President Larry Bodine had prepared a couple of questions for the panel. My first question is energy standards. We had a renewable energy standard. I don't think we have one anymore. I think the Republicans basically eliminated it. So can you talk about maybe the perceived message that the Republicans are putting out, that having a renewable energy standard puts additional burdens on ratepayers that are unwarranted and unnecessary, and talk about how a renewable energy standard actually would help Arizona ratepayers and Arizona citizens. I'll open that to anybody who wants to answer on the panel.
I'd love to hear from the candidates.
Go ahead, Derek.
All right. Yeah, first I wanted to respond to Lauren and just say, yeah, no, you're right. It's definitely an uphill battle to win, historically 3 seats for the Democrats on the Corporation Commission. It'd definitely be nothing short of a miracle. But, regardless, we're that close in the legislature. There's, other races that matter. And if anything, I'm hoping to inspire other young Latino, LGBT, and as a reserve officer, any military affiliated people to run for office, to vote. And, we left seats open, I think, for Congress and other races last time around, and that, may have cost us down ballot and so forth. So, we need to recruit the best people possible. I like to think I'm one of those people, but I still think all of you, we all play a big role in helping create a majority. And it's, we're obviously.
Oh, yeah, I hear you. Mm-hmm.
Anyways.
Well, what do you think about the rest rules then?
So for the renewable energy standard, I was reviewing that in the standard we used to have, and I watched some of the old debates of Sandra and some of the Republican colleagues and past people there, and I think there is there's a perception that I think maybe because of Texas or fake news or whatever it is, there's this perception that renewable energy like that's going to cause a problem, and it turns off reflexively lots of Republican voters for some reason. But I still think that to win a majority here, you need, the Democrat base, you need to win independents who care enough about renewable energy and would, make that a priority in their vote. So I think the Democrat ticket should be in favor of some, maybe we'd have to reevaluate it because now we're in, of course, 2023, but instituting some sort of rule that would create an energy standard for the near future. And all the private sector, pretty much, car companies are moving that way. We're going to get there one way or another. I'm not sure why Republicans are clawing and kicking and screaming to take us backwards. That seems to be a theme for most of their policy issues. But yeah, I would say I would have to look into a specific new proposal, and I would love to be a part of that and look into that. But yeah, we need something, because if not, these companies aren't going to do it themselves, at least not at the rate we need to, not at the pace.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, I'll just add that, the two Republicans who shall remain nameless, who unfortunately prevailed this last election, that was a message that I saw them reiterating a lot, was that they wouldn't allow basically renewable energy sources to come in if it was going to hurt the ratepayers. And I think that's a message that certainly resonated with Republicans and probably resonated with a lot of independents, just by the numbers. So I think, but when they make that claim, they make it just sort of arm wavy, and that's the end of the discussion. So they're implying that renewable energy is going to hurt the ratepayer. And I think it's really important to start laying out a case of here's why it doesn't hurt the ratepayer. Now, certainly there are some forms of renewable energy that are more expensive than fossil fuels. I think we, should be honest about that and make a point.
Which are those? Which are those? I mean, I think it's good to start with a positive frame. We know renewables. If you do a request for proposal, right, and you put it out there, and Sandra can talk about this, even APS mentioned this before the commission, that solar with battery backup is always cheaper. So I don't see any renewable energy. I mean, can you give me examples of that?
Well, no, I mean,
celebrate that it's the cheapest form of energy.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying we shouldn't shy away from the facts of the ones that aren't beneficial. But as you said, there are plenty that are beneficial, that are cost effective. And I think, yeah, that has to be that's a point to make to the ratepayers, that we can have our cake and eat it too.
Can I jump in? I think one of the issues that Lauren and I got tagged with was the Green New Deal.
Yeah.
We did not talk about the Green New Deal. That was what the Republicans kept saying that we were going to do. We clearly had a plan on what we wanted to do as far as renewable energy standard, and what we wanted to do with water, what we wanted to do with battery backup. It is clear that our opposition, who said very publicly that they were only concerned and their support was for the large corporations. Mm-hmm. We talked about being consumer advocates. We talked about what would happen if they were elected. It didn't matter, but they got elected, and everything that we told them was going to happen has happened. So if you're not on your A game, and you haven't figured this out yet, you got an uphill battle. But I'm going to tell you that if you aren't consumer driven, and the consumers of this state don't clearly know that you are going to be out there on their behalf, it's just almost water under the bridge. But I'm not going to be afraid to talk about renewable energy, because when I talk about renewable energy and mandating for rules for renewable energy, I know that those energy companies, the utility companies, are going to come back and say, well, we need to add a fee. And that's how they do it. Mm-hmm. They talk about adding a fee here, adding a fee there, because they're losing money here. It's not the truth. They are making tons of money. tons of money.
Mhm.
You gotta be able to fight the fight
Mhm.
against those utility companies. And if you can't stand up to the utility companies, then why are you running? If you're not gonna be bold enough to talk about why you're running, then maybe you're not the right candidates.
Well, I so agree. And you have to adopt a positive frame, not be on the defensive. I want to tell you guys about a meeting that I had. I went to this meeting. It was a breakfast meeting with the energy industry. So there were some solar folks there, but it was mostly fossil fuels. And Sandra couldn't make it that day. She had an important commission meeting. And so I went, and then there were the two Republican candidates. So during that meeting, Kevin Thompson, longtime lobbyist for Southwest Gas, actually got up on this little stage and said, I'm going to be there for you. We are running so we can make you guys as profitable as can be, so you guys can be successful. That's why we're here. That's why we're running. It was the most shocking admission of bias and partisanship, that there were people in the room that wrote it down and started tweeting about it. Like, I can't believe a commission candidate actually said this. We tried to get the attention of the media and point out what they had actually said, because it's the old phrase, is it Maya Angelou that said, when people say who they are, listen. And they were clearly stating that they were going to be working to represent the utilities and not the people of Arizona. So this is a battle. Make no mistake about it. This shouldn't be sort of a gentleman's fight. This is something where we need to get our point of view across, and people often aren't listening, and you have to be a strong advocate and a champion. You can't sit back and be defensive.
Yeah, and I think that's, part of where education comes in. I know you and Sandra talked a lot about this during your, campaign last year, but just educating people about the commission, and how important it is. I can't tell you how many times going door to door collecting signatures, I say I'm running for the Corporation Commission, and they have absolutely no idea what it is. And I think that's a huge, if people don't know how important it is, they don't know how important it is to go and vote correctly for it, and pay attention to it. So I think, for the Democratic candidates, educating people about what it is and how it affects their daily lives is going to be a key to the next election.
Yeah, I think there's very little awareness that next year in 24, Arizona Corporation Commission is going to be the only statewide race on the ballot. I mean, it is the highest Arizona position, other than, I suppose the senatorial race that we're going to be having in 24. So we definitely need to pull out all the stops, and ADP needs to step up and really do some education and groundwork to help our Corporation Commission candidates. Joseph, I believe you might have prepared a question for our panelists. You want to go ahead?
Well, actually, I'm going to voice one from Paul Stapleton Smith.
Okay.
Here's the question. Is there significant interagency cooperation and opportunities between our state attorney general and the ACC?
That's actually a great question, Paul. I think that the AG's office is could clearly bring a lot of attention and take action against some of the things that have taken place at the commission since January of this year. I know her time has been filled with doing other things. I have called her and said, hey, I'm trying to push just a little bit, but I know she's busy at other things. But I will keep nudging, because I think she could play a significant role and create a little havoc. As Representative Lewis used to say, Congressman Lewis, let's create some good trouble. And I think she could create some of that good trouble.
And I would just add that Chris is dealing with just an agency that's been so mismanaged, and the funds have been so misappropriated. It is like drinking from a fire hose in the AG's office now. But here's a woman who's centering climate change in all of her decision making, who's committed to that. And she worked with Sandra to establish these renewable energy standards and the energy efficiency standards that changed Arizona so much for the better, that saved us billions of dollars. And so, we have a great friend now. The climate has a great friend in the AG's office. And I know that the AG has ultimate responsibility over some of the decisions ACC makes. And I know we'll have a solid footing with Chris Mays.
Yeah, just a reminder, if people aren't aware, that Chris Mays previously held office as an Arizona Corporation Commissioner. So having her in the Attorney General's office with that understanding of having been a commissioner is a special boon to us. Paul, did you have any follow-up you wanted to ask regarding that?
Well, in that, it's so generous of you both to be here and for everybody on this call. So what you said about Chris May, she'll be in Tucson tomorrow. She's on a road tour doing antitrust hearings, public hearings on the Kroger-Albertsons merger.
Yeah.
I love, Lauren, what you just said, and Sandra, thank you. When I said opportunities, it's something we're working on the federal level and with other state agencies now with Hobbs. And that interagency cooperation is something that, of course, we haven't seen. And so how can we best support that efforts with the current dominant position of the R's on the ACC? How do we best support that? Because all of us are activists on this call. Everybody here is busy. They do RTS. And how can we, under the circumstances, until we elect our majority, how do we best support that? I'm calling it cooperation. I don't mean it for it to be a euphemism, but what would you two say to that? How do we best do that? Go ahead.
I would say to you that it would be a good opportunity for myself and Lauren to sit down with the governor, her staff, and Chris Mays and her staff to talk about these issues of where the commission, which wouldn't put Commissioner Tovar in a position where she would be ethically in trouble, but the two of us could actually work with Chris and even DWR. I mean, there's some issues there where there's some intermingling with the commission on water issues and permits that, they say, well, you got to go to DWR and you can't tell DWR what to do. Well, I want to know, is there a 100-year water supply? And only DWR can give that permit or give the permission for that. Who says that DWR is not playing footsies with some of these companies?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's what has happened. That's why that report that Ducey had and didn't allow that report, the water report, to come out pertaining to the West Valley. Mm-hmm. There are some serious issues. And I think that would be a good opportunity for at least those three agencies. And there may be other agencies that could come along and even bring in cities and towns and rural communities to talk. I think there are some opportunities to do that. So that is a great idea.
Yeah, and when you talk about working together and different stakeholders and agencies, let's not forget our Native American brothers and sisters. And with Mara Mahoney, who learned at the foot of Sandra Kennedy, and she also worked with Chris Mays at ASU in the Center for the Utility of the Future, right? Now she's heading up the Governor's Office of Resilience. So there's already this natural sort of understanding of the issues that face our tribal communities, which are so important, which have been ignored by the past governor's administration. And so I think tribal cooperation and negotiation is going to be central to our water crisis and to our energy crisis and to the building of our clean energy economy. And so there's already increased interagency cooperation just from the mere fact of Governor Hobbs's ascension, should we say, and to the people that she's appointing. So there's great opportunities for that, for increased cooperation, I would say. And I just want to say, like, there's Tempe, we're dealing right now with the coyotes coming in, and they actually have said to the reporters and to me when I was a council member, they want to expand Tempe Town Lake to take it to Priest, right? They say, oh, they'll get the federal government to pay for that. Imagine the enormous water implications of expanding Tempe Town Lake, when already that project is going to use 1 million gallons of water a day. Tempe uses 50 million gallons of water. This project itself will add another 1 million gallons of water a day. So imagine the environmental implications. That may seem like a Tempe decision, And the Tempe voters are going to vote on it starting April 19th, but it's going to impact our environment. It's going to be a slap in the face to our tier 2 shortage declaration, where we need to cut water use by 21%. And it is going to be, you know, have massive environmental implications of, if we do move the lake, that what will happen to the bird and the avian community and the impacts on the airport. I could go on and on, because that's my main focus right now in life, is defeating that terrible deal at the city of Tempe. But every decision that's before us has an energy and a water component. And we all need to understand the interconnectedness of these decisions at the local, at the tribal, at the regional, and at the national level.
Thanks, Lauren. John and Derek, anything you want to add to Paul's query?
Just say real quick in regards to the AG's office. I know some people over there, they're very hardworking. They are underpaid, trust me, but they are some of the best attorneys in the state. And so if Chris Mays directs something at Special Prosecution Division, ethics investigation, if they're able to do that, we have some of the best people on that. And then as far as cooperating with other agencies, I think we should also not forget, I know there's limits, but not forget about our federal partners. We've, obviously have a Democrat administration. We can work with our congressmen, work with the EPA. We can work with Congress to do our best. And, if the Corporation Commission is not going to do the right thing, then there's possibly ways at the federal level that maybe, we can get some things to help push policies in the right direction.
Thanks, Gary. John?
Yeah, the only thing I can add is, as we were talking earlier about, what could be done with a Democratic majority on the commission. I think arranging, cooperation between the AG's office, the governor's office, maybe the legislature coming soon. I think that Democratic majority would make huge amounts of cooperation possible and would benefit all of us.
Thanks, John. Now, Larry, did you prepare a question that you'd like to ask for the panel?
Yes, I did, and I wanted to direct this at the new candidates, Jonathon and Derek. I did some homework to try to figure out how the Republicans won that supermajority on the Corporation Commission, and it was a close race. The Republicans only won by 2 percentage points of the vote, so this is definitely a winnable race. Then I looked at how much everybody spent, and from my research, every candidate spent right around $300,000. So it's not a question of money. And it occurs to me, it might be a question of messaging and campaign issues that you address. So here are the winning issues to get on the Corporation Commission. Nick Myers says you can't mandate clean energy, unless you consult the utilities first and let them decide. And that the major issue, this is Nick Myers, facing Arizona is the border, which the commission has nothing to do with. Kevin Thompson said, we got to keep the Green New Deal out of Arizona. And we should not decide energy policies for Arizona utilities. So that's the message that won. How do you overcome that? What would you say that would drown that out?
Well, I can start and say that, as Sandra already said, I think the caricature of the Green New Deal that the Republicans have been talking about forever, really kind of unfairly, they use that as a bludgeon against Sandra and Lauren, unfortunately. And again, it's a caricature of what they tell their own, followers what the Green New Deal is about. So I mean, we can't control if they're going to try to use that strategy again, but I think being prepared for it and having talking points and like you said, I think you said it was Nick Myers that talked about, we're not going to dictate generation capacity, let the companies deal with that, to try to get better costs. I think it's important to say that, you can have your cake and eat it too. Like we were saying earlier, you can have renewable energy sources that are cheaper for the consumer. And last thing I'll add here is Maggie had a wonderful point in the chat, that just the undervote. There's a lot of undervoting for the Corporation Commission, people just leaving that area blank. And so I think that's again where that education component comes into. I think it only benefits the Democrats to educate more people, get them interested and paying attention to this race. I think that that can only benefit us.
Look, the bottom line, without taking too much time, is we need to out-organize our opposition. Messaging does matter. And again, as I'm talking to voters, going door to door, Jonathon and I are doing that now, literally every weekend. We're out there before the sun gets too brutal. We're talking to people about the Corporation Commission. We're asking them, what do you think about renewable energies? So I want to put the consumer first. The first thing I'd like to promise, if I could, was, hey, I'd love to lower your energy bills at the end of the day. And then the question that follows that is, well, how do we get there? And so just talking to people, getting to see what their biases are, what the misinformation is. So it's two parts. One, the party up and down these different races need to organize and really put effort into these races, because unfortunately last year, and it was one of the best years for the party in recent history, some races were ignored, and it probably cost us very winnable races, cost the legislature and others. So the party internally needs to be focused. We need to all get together. We need to get our message. We need to, just like Jonathon and I were talking about, combine resources. Lauren and Sandra ran a great campaign. I saw both of them on the campaign trail, and they did everything they could. But it's a combination of internal dynamics, churning out every last vote we can get, finding those independents that are reachable, and even some moderate Republicans that are just sick of the current commission and agenda, and just telling them, look, this is not, it shouldn't be a red or blue issue. This is about your pocketbook. At the end of the day, this is just about you and your home, your family. Do you want to spend more money on groceries or fun stuff, or do you want to be paying exponentially higher bills? Just being real with them. So I'm hoping as a people advocate that I can get through to more people, but again, internal stuff, and then finding that right message. And yeah, it's going to be a battling information. For all I know, they can use, AI technology and make up things that we say. It's a brave new world out there. Indeed. So we'll do as best as we can.
Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. I'm going to use a little bit of panelist discretion here and pin Russell Lowe's here. I think he has a question about clean elections that I think will be very interesting. And of course, Russell is a longtime energy activist and expert here in Arizona. Russell, why don't you unmute and let us know what you have in mind?
Sure, thanks, Mike. I was wondering about the inability for us to beat the Republicans for the last few elections when we've had better candidates, especially this last time with Sandra and Lauren. We couldn't have had better candidates, really. And how can we overcome that? Do we have to go non-clean election, or do we have to go clean election with the Dems, firmly, behind the ACC race in every precinct in the state? Because a lot of the precincts, there was no ACC literature whatsoever delivered. Does that have that much of an impact? Other questions. I mean, and the other thing that I wanted to ask about, the two of you knew more about the issues than the others from any kind of public interest perspective. You knew that community choice energy would save more CO2 than any other option in the state. Community choice energy is where the city takes over the sourcing of power, but it has to be approved by the Corporation Commission. You knew all kinds of things that were, very well expressed during this campaign, but it seems is the funding mechanism, that was chosen the way to go, or what is the real reason why we lost? And as Larry had pointed out, each candidate spent roughly the same, unless there was a lot of dark money that wasn't accounted for. Was that an issue also?
Thanks, Russell.
I'd love to take a jab at that.
Please.
Go ahead, Sandra.
Okay.
Thank you for that question, Ms. Lowe's. I think there was a lot of dark money that's been unaccounted for. I really do. you're not gonna see Turning Point USA tell you how much money they spent. And I know that they spent some money because I was told they spent a lot of money to help the two candidates. APS, I'm pretty sure they had some dark money that we will never know about because they don't want to have to report it. Now that, I was in tune every year of asking every utility to tell us how much money you're spending on campaigns. And now you've got Commissioner Tovar doing the same thing. They don't want to disclose it. Southwest Gas openly opposed a candidate for the legislature up in Nevada because she wanted to concentrate on renewable energy. They put a lot of money in the race. And then when I asked how much, they didn't want to tell me. In fact, they held off until after I left the commission. And then Commissioner Tovar picked up the mantle to say, you never answered the question. So we know that there's dark money being spent. And clearly you could tell from our race that there was a lot of money spent that we just didn't know about. But we've got to figure out a method to get people from the top to talk about the down ballot races. And that is where the issue really was. And that's where I saw it being a problem. When you couldn't get the Senate candidate to talk about it, you couldn't get the governor to talk about it. These are opportunities that they had to bring us along. And it was a missed opportunity. And I'm just being honest. And if they don't like what I say, I'm sorry. But it's reality.
Any other reactions to how best to finance a revanchism of Democratic Party into the ACC?
Or how best to win with messaging or with more Democratic Party support, etc.
Yeah, we needed to get our message out, and I think we were all drowned out by the craziness of the last election. Let's face it, when you think about Mark Fincham and Kerry Lake and the opponent and Abe Hamadah, those three candidates are the most extreme statewide candidates I think we've seen in Arizona history, maybe excluding Evan Meekum, maybe not. They were extreme. And so I think there was this battle royale to bring attention to that. And Republicans that crossed over were able to do that and cross over and support Katie and support Chris and support Adrian. But then down ballot, they just returned home to mama. They returned home to their party. So you saw Superintendent of Public Instruction. We had an amazing candidate, an incumbent, Kathy Hoffman. And we had Martine Casado, who's the best Treasury candidate to ever run for that office. And then we had these two down ballot races. So I believe we were a down ballot casualty. That's part of it. And obviously we didn't get our message out enough, but it was drowned by all of the insanity that was at the top of the ticket. Should we run traditionally? I don't know. I believe in the clean election system. I do believe, that was an opportunity for, you can't work with an outside group, an independent expenditure group. But if ever the environmental movement across the country wanted to look at a race that had profound implications for the clean energy transition, it was that race. And with a small investment, with IE support, we could have won that, but they didn't put the investment in when we really had a chance. And in 24, it's going to be a bigger ask of them because they'll need to get 3 for a Democratic majority. So a lot of us are thinking maybe this should just be run traditionally and try and get more money and not, hope that maybe environmental groups are going to come in and support.
Good points.
Yeah, Russell, I'll add that, that's something that I've been thinking about a lot the last couple months, is even though, like Lauren said, I also believe in the clean elections system. I think it benefits Arizona. But I think as Sandra said earlier, we don't want to lose this fight because we're trying to be, gentlemanly about the fight and the other side's playing dirty. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know what the answer is yet. For example, I'm currently registered to run clean elections. I'm going down that path, but I'm keeping my mind open and I'm reaching out to people to see if they think that running traditionally could bring in at least the same amount of money, if not more. Obviously, if it brings in less, you really risk hurting your messaging. So yeah, it's this very difficult balancing act. And if anyone figures it out, let me know. It's a hard question.
Derek?
Well,
Yes, if I could just say real quick.
If you bring in the same amount, it's better to go clean, because then you don't have to spend so much time on fundraising and the like.
Let's
go ahead, Derek.
Thanks,
I agree. This is my last answer, then I have to go back into court. I'll just say I really love the clean election system. I think other states should adopt it. One of my top priorities is getting as much money out of politics as possible. I mean, unfortunately, part of the job as I'm learning and being a politician, you gotta ask people. Asking people for money is pretty much what you're doing, especially if you didn't have this process 24/7. And I think that it's just led to this horrible situation we have in our country on many policy fronts and issues in DC and even here in Arizona. So I'm running clean election. I'm going to stick to it. I'm proud of the fact that I'm not taking, big corporate donations or any business donations. I just want individual people. I want a grassroots campaign. And I'm really hoping that we can get enough people to, we can't win the majority this year. Let's get as much representation as we can. It's a long battle to flip these states, like the legislature, the commission. If not now, maybe by 2026, whatever it takes. I'm going to run clean election, and we'll fight the fight.
I'd just like to remind everybody that we're going to 1:30 today in order to accommodate the panel format, and we can certainly go longer if our panelists are able to stay longer. I certainly invite them to do so. We have several more questions, and right now I see that we have Diane Post, who is a distinguished practitioner before the commission. So I'd like to go ahead and have her unmute and have her ask any questions she might be interested in asking, and give us a brief update as to what she's doing before the commission.
Well, I just want to give you an update that the Salt River Project filed an appeal of our January win to the Supreme Court of Arizona, which kicked them back down to the Court of Appeals. So their brief is due in the Court of Appeals on May 16. So that will be the beginning of the next cycle of a decision at the Court of Appeals. From whoever loses in the Court of Appeals will appeal to the Supreme Court. So we won't be finished with it at that time. The other thing I want to let you know is that Salt River Project is really putting heavy pressure on the Corporation Commission to reopen this and renegotiate the deal so they can moot the lawsuit. Of course, they can't come to a deal without the interveners being involved, and that would be Sierra Club and Randolph. So I have definitely made that point, and if they've met with them, I don't know, because I've not been told. But they're also putting heavy pressure on Randolph, the community of Randolph itself, to try to split the community, to get the community fighting, and to undermine that, and to try to force them to negotiate rather than
be familiar with the Randolph case. It's a classic case of environmental racism.
Absolutely. So I don't have any particular questions. I mean, I just want to let you know what's happening. And if anybody has any bright ideas on how to respond to this, then please let me know.
All right. Thanks, Diane. Does any panelist want to respond to anything Diane said there?
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Lauren. I'm sorry.
No, you started. Go.
I was just going to say the Randolph issue is a very tough issue. And I actually had quite a bit of fun with it while I was at the commission. And I appreciate Ms. Post for being the spokesperson for Randolph and its community members down there. What SRP is doing does not surprise me. Does not surprise me at all. And I have spoken with some of the community members, And it's going to take not just that community, it's going to take all of us to stop this and to show utility companies like this that they are out of touch and not in control. I do understand that, you know, you've got a chairman who wants to be a power player and he wants to show that he's got enough power to make things move and rotate the way he sees it and the utility companies see it. I think he is getting himself into a world of trouble, or maybe a tornado may be accumulating, and he's not going to know what hit him once not only the community, but a lawsuit against him, and I hope you're listening, Diane, a lawsuit against him to talk about his unethics and how he is moving this case and how the Corporation Commission has done some things and violated open meeting laws. So I'm hoping that helps you a little bit. And I'm hoping that the community will just stay steadfast and keep moving in the direction that they are moving into.
Your lips to God ears, Sandra. Anybody else
And
want to?
I wanted to say one thing. I forgot to mention, we need publicity. Nothing scares them more than publicity. So we got that great article in The Guardian, which Lauren put in the chat, but we need more. So if any of you have connections, ideas, abilities, we need publicity. That drives them nuts more than anything else.
And we live to drive them nuts. Thanks, Diane. All right, let's turn it over.
I do want to say,
ahead,
SRP has board elections every 2 years. So in 2024, in April, we're going to be electing 2 new at-large board members and a lot of district board members. And SRP is really on the other side of history right now. And the inequities and the environmental racism exhibited in the policies they're putting forward need to check, and they just don't need to check. We need to elect a dominant solar powered board on that, you know, for the water and the energy board. So please start paying attention to that election because so few people vote. So your involvement in those elections, I know you guys are in Tucson, but you have friends up here. That is a really important election for the future of energy in Arizona.
Okay. We're going to abuse the time of these panelists as much as we can. So Joe D, let's get to some audience questions, both in the chat and who have their hands raised. I'm going to turn moderation over to you. Thanks, Joe.
Sandy, unmute yourself and what's your question?
Programs like TEP's solar shares. Is this meaningful? Can it do something? Long-term viability of something like this benefit the community?
Can I take a jab at that?
Please.
You know, the Solar Shares program is a great program. Is it meaningful? I think TEP can do better. In fact, all of the utilities can do better. And when they do better, they can encourage other consumers to join in with rooftop solar or some type of participation, whether it is education on new windows or how can I best keep the, and I'm speaking in terms of consumer advocacy. TEP is bad, but not as bad as APS. But I can tell you that TEP has probably done a better job at renewable energy, battery storage, educating schools on new buses. And I have been proud of some of the programs that they push during my, during my time at the commission. So I would say to you that even though TEP is greedy, but not as greedy as APS, I think that there is room to get them to do more. But the only way you're gonna get them to do more is if you had a majority of commission members who offered programs for them to do more, and then they would get on board. That was the only time I saw them getting on board, was when myself, Bob Burns, and Boyd Dunn were pushing them to do more. So it just depends on who's sitting on the commission and the policy, and who's going to drive the policy and how that policy is going to be written.
Okay, George, Beverly, you have a question. Unmute yourself.
Thank you for all the panelists. You guys talked about Randolph already, so I'm not going to talk about that. But I will talk about environmental problems in the BIPOC community. So my question is what type of civic education can we give our seminars, our webinars to the BIPOC commission, the BIPOC community about the ACC and also civil engagement?
I'll throw out that I think, George, I think I saw your comment in the chat earlier about, both the ACC and the party have not been good enough, or really good, just period, about reaching out to the BIPOC community and I think especially informing them of how something like the ACC is relevant to them. I think that people that are disadvantaged for one reason or another, economically or socially, they're going to be even less likely to understand the importance of the ACC and why it affects their daily lives, probably more so than many others. So I think that's, again, I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record, but that education aspect of, I think we'd see much more success from that community, on these down ballot races, if we go to them and really make that case. And it's not, there's that education component, but also there's making that case, really convincing them that we have their best interests at heart. The ACC can, as a group, have their best interest at heart. We just need their support to get there.
I'd point out that, having an in-depth discussion like this one in a format like this is also quite educative to the BIPOC community. I mean, certainly we should spread this, the recording of this event around, because there is a lot of good content here. And I want to thank everybody for their participation and holding on. We're now at 1:30. So if anybody has other commitments, feel free to log off. But if you can remain, we do have more questions. So Joe?
Sure.
Well, I do want to, sorry. Could I just add further to that question, and thank you for it, because equity issues are ignored by the majority in the Corporation Commission right now. And obviously the IRA has transformative capacity to really help in all communities, especially communities, lower income communities, because having a $4,000 tax credit for a used electric car can help transform and help electrify our state. There's a lot of energy efficiency measures that can really help in mobile home communities, for example. And we have this really gaping issue in Arizona. We had a $5 billion surplus last year. None of those funds went to help to the clean energy transition, the just and equitable transition, to help our Native American communities realize the renewable energy potential, because they've been shut down and coal plants have been shuttered, as they should, but we've left those communities high and dry. And it's rural communities of Joseph City and other Page, but it's also Native American communities in the Navajo Nation. And we need to really pay attention to the issue, because we grew as cities in Tucson and in Phoenix through the extraction of resources from the Navajo Nation, from other nations. When you think about it, the Navajo Reservoir was built up over millions of years. It was drained in 50 years, right? And so water quality and water quantities are an enormous problem in the Navajo Nation. We have champions like Nicole Horseherder bringing attention to it, but we don't have the legislature looking at any kind of equitable approach. And certainly all of Sandra's work trying to bring in more investment for the just and equitable energy transition, aren't going to be happening with just Anna Tovar towing the line. So there are enormous equity issues that should be before the Corporation Commission, but they are not, and they need to be discussed.
Great, thank you for that. And we have a question from Lillian Fox.
Okay, thank you very much. I think Sandra and Lauren, I think you're both so wonderful that it's heartbreaking that you didn't win last time. I voted for you. I don't understand why you weren't elected. It's got to be the dark money. Now, I disagree with, we don't need expertise on the ACC because the staff has it. My experience as a community activist is, and my background is in science and technology, that there are multiple ways to interpret data, and we really need a consumer advocate who understands the data and can go toe-to-toe with staff. Now, that's done with my preaching. What I was going to ask is, what's the position? Well, it's kind of unfair because I think we only have one candidate that's still on. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, that's too bad. Because I like everything you've had to say, Mr. Hill, but what's your position on nuclear power?
Sorry, could you say that again, Lillian?
What's your position on nuclear power?
No.
Oh, gosh, wow. Open up a whole can of worms here. So
right, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. This is not nearly as straightforward as solar. So my take on nuclear, and my grandfather was a nuclear engineer himself, actually, worked on the USS Nautilus, first nuclear submarine. And he had some pretty strong feelings about nuclear, and I get most of that from him. So I guess right up front, I'm not in favor at all of building any more what are called thermal reaction generators. So that's really what most of the fission generators in the United States are, simply because they're cheaper, they're easier to make. But I'm sure you know, and everyone else knows, they produce a lot of very long lasting isotopes that, forget about what are we leaving our children, what are we leaving our grandchildren. You have to worry about what are you leaving the next species that takes over the earth. These things are so long lived. So I'm not in favor of that at all. I think that's 20th century technology. The time has passed. I would be open to hearing someone's proposal if they were to propose what's called a fast reactor. I'd be skeptical, but I'd be willing to hear them out. And a fast reactor is more what you see on, an aircraft carrier, a submarine. It produces different isotopes that don't always last as long. One of the advantages is under the right conditions, you can actually use it to, I'll say, burn the bad isotopes from the thermal reactors. So yeah, not wild about it, but I'm willing to listen. I am very interested, and I've been watching very closely the development of thorium reactors. They're not weaponizable. They produce much shorter-lived isotopes. And I think if we can get to the point where a thorium type reactor is economically viable, that might be an interesting portion of our energy portfolio. Not 100% convinced. The technology is certainly not there yet, but I'm intrigued by the way it's going. So sorry, that's not a straight yes or no answer, but as we already said, that this is such a complicated topic.
But I understand what you said perfectly. Is there any hope for fusion in the future?
As a space person who's worked on space missions, we we've been promised fusion to run our satellites and our probes. They keep telling us it'll only be 30 more years, and they've been saying that since 1950. You know, if we were taking votes, I'd vote for it today. Let's get it going. But there's still a lot of technical hurdles there. I mean, we finally got ignition at the National Ignition Facility. That's like a fraction of a percent of the way there. So I think maybe our grandchildren or our great grandchildren, hopefully it'll be ready for them. And that's, I think, maybe where thorium comes in. Maybe that's an acceptable bridge until we get something like fusion.
I think Lauren
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, in regards, Lillian, the debate we're having, the raging debate. So I think that, water and energy nexus expertise is greatly needed on the commission, no doubt. Over 80% of the time that you spend as a commissioner, although Sandra could confirm that, it is on rate cases, right? You're representing the consumer. You have to understand about rate setting, and there's courses you can take in that. But we need water and energy expertise, but there are enormous capabilities that we have from the university system to bring that expertise on. So I would push back a little bit with that. I would like to yield time to Russell Lowe to talk about nuclear, because if you have a technology neutral RFP that goes out, show me where nuclear would ever come in where it's cheaper and doesn't carry all the risks. It's just simply not. It's a vastly expensive form of energy, and the SMRs are at least 10 years away from being produced. So my point of view is, show me a technology neutral RFP that results in nuclear is the answer. I don't think you'll see it. But Russell, what do you think?
Well, nuclear energy, for one, takes 0.8 gallons of water per every kilowatt hour. Solar takes 0.02 gallons just to clean the panels. So you have a situation where the Palo Verde nuclear plant is using 80,000 acre feet of water a year, compared to Tucson water. The entire Tucson water, which covers all of the city and more, uses 100,000, but recycles a lot of that. The 80,000 at Palo Verde is completely lost in evaporation to the environment. So you have a huge water issue. And then the cost issue is enormous. And I just put a comment down about where you can go to read on this, an article that I've written. Nuclear power is about 30 cents per kilowatt hour delivered. That's what the Vogtle plant is, the new nuclear reactor that is delivering power now as of last month in Georgia. It's the first reactor that started construction and was completed in this century in the United States. And there'll probably be one more reactor there, and that'll be it. That 30 cents a kilowatt hour compared to coal at about 15, and compared to solar with battery, with 4 hours of battery backup, which is considered the gold standard. Solar with battery backup is 4 cents a kilowatt hour plus the delivery, so it comes out to about 10 cents per kilowatt hour, because delivery costs are 6 cents per kilowatt hour. So you're talking 10 cents versus 30 cents. So that means every time you spend a dollar on nuclear, you preempt spending you preempt spending the amount of money that would give you 3 times the amount of energy. It just doesn't make any economic sense. And the small modular reactors they're talking about, the reason why they didn't go with those, they did go with those in the 1960s. They were too expensive. They were cheaper to go with the larger reactors, but the larger reactors are costing more money by far than solar. Solar's come down like crazy. I didn't even think it would come down this much. And I'm an energy analyst. Solar has come down. It's supposed to go down to a penny per kilowatt hour, plus the delivery costs. So it'd be about 7 cents per kilowatt hour by 1930. By the 2030s, the early 2030s. So solar is clearly stealing the show. The vast majority of the energy expansion in the United States and India and China are all in renewable energy, and solar's outnumbering wind dramatically now. It's turned around. Wind used to be the majority of our expansion. Last year in the United States, 95% of the expansion was in solar compared to wind and solar combined. It does not make any sense to go with nuclear water-wise, pollution-wise, the waste of the plant. The fast reactors are incredibly toxic, and they require plutonium in the process. It's all part of the mix. Thorium reactors require plutonium for startup. So do the liquid sodium reactors that are supposed to be small modular reactors. Those all take plutonium startup. Plutonium is toxic. 1/10000000th of a pound will kill a person within hours if they breathe it in. It's just incredibly toxic, and it's also nuclear weapons. That's the best material possible for nuclear weapons. But one of the best is also thorium-232, which will be produced by any thorium reactor, and that can be put into nuclear bombs. So there's a lot of misinformation out there on thorium, saying that it's proliferation proof, and it is not. That's just a circular logic where people are citing each other for information on that.
Yeah, and all this information that Russell shared will be on the quiz tomorrow. We have last question, Andrea Kennedy.
Can I say one thing?
Sure, if you have to.
Yeah, I only asked that question about nuclear because I understand, and I really love the data you just gave us, Mr. Lowe. I only asked that question because Mr. Hill has an engineering background, and too many engineers support nuclear. So I'm happy to hear he's not one of those crazies. And so I appreciate the data that was provided.
Sure, and everything that Russell just mentioned is in his article in the chat room. So help yourself. Andrea Kennedy, you have the last question.
Thank you. As I was listening to the idea of having a renewable standard, perhaps keeping discouraging business development, it occurred to me that since more and more businesses want to be renewable, maybe it would keep business out if we don't have a proper renewable standard. Anybody's thoughts? Thank you.
Well, I would just say that, yeah, we have these national companies coming to Arizona, and they are not coming to Arizona, and they have renewable energy standards far beyond ours. I was frustrated when I was on the Tempe City Council that we couldn't get Carvana to put solar on their headquarters in Tempe right along the lake. It made no sense at all. So, I think, the business community and cities are moving forward. Even the military is moving forward, but we have, retrenchment. We have retrenchment from the radical right in Arizona that somehow equate the clean energy transition as being something, socialistic or imposing values or something. It's not. It's the economic case is there. The environmental case is certainly there. And the social equity case is there to adopt solar and to make it available to all, no matter your income level. We should be celebrating it. We should be finding every which way to solarize our state. That was Sandra's passion and is Sandra's passion. And I adopted it. Thank you, Sandra.
Sure I understand.
Whoops, my phone is talking to me. It says it doesn't understand, so it must be a MAGA Republican. But we know that this is the future, just like how many people are going to hold on to the past and not see what's before their eyes. As Sandra, I shouldn't be quoting you all the time, but you said solar is prosperity for all.
Hey, that's a wonderful way to wrap things up. First of all, let's do a big Democrats of Greater Tucson welcome for all our panelists. Thank you so much for sharing your ideas, your thoughts, and we really appreciate it. I really want to give out a special Democrats of Greater Tucson appreciation for Mike Bryan. Mike has done a fantastic job of putting together a wonderful program. Mike, way to go, buddy.
Thank you.
And
I want to thank everybody here. for showing up, number one, because we have somebody who didn't, and that was disappointing. But I'd like to thank especially Jonathon and Mr. What was his last name? Feraldo?
Derek
Feraldo.
Derek Feraldo, for showing up and willing to become, impromptu members of our panel. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Well, Derek's not here anymore to thank, but I do want to thank you both.